Welcome everybody to our VT University live session today on VT Docs, Acronyms, Doc and Excel Compare. I'm really glad that Denai is joining us again to walk us through everything. So thanks so much, Denai, for being here with us. A little bit of webinar housekeeping as always. So our call will again last about an hour. We have our question facility over in the GoToWebinar control panel. We have a Q&A session at the end, but also at the end of each section. So we're going to pause after acronyms, we're going to pause after Doc Compare, and after Excel Compare, so you can ask your questions to Denai. And there's a survey at the end that I'd be really grateful if you could complete, just to let us know what you thought of it. And as always, we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar and the slides in a couple of days. So it's good to have you. My name is Evelyn Wolf. I'm the CMO here at VisibleThread. And if you've got any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. There's my email address, evelyn.wolf@visiblethread.com. And as I said, Denai Malyanga, our VP of Professional Service, is joining us today for our session. So welcome, Denai. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change over presenter rights to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
And your presenter now, if you want to share your screen.
Alrighty.
And the final thing that I wanted to mention, and I keep forgetting to say this, Denai, is that we're actually going to turn off our cameras fairly shortly, just to save a little bit of bandwidth, because we're all working from home. Okay, so I'm going to turn mine off now already, and Denai, we can see your screen with the lovely flower. So you're good to go.
Alrighty, I'll turn my screen off as well. Alrighty, welcome everybody, and thank you, as Evelyn was saying, for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to do these webinars as well, and hopefully get you some good information. So I'm going to just jump into it. As before, we do have the slide deck that goes along with it. I think it's a little bit easier for me to be in the live environment, so we can kind of run through how you actually go ahead and do things, and you can see how things download and all that good stuff, and the amount of time that it takes. So what I am going to do is I am in the welcome screen for VT Docs. So, I'll always, when I log in, this is where I come to first. And then I'm going to go to my folders over here in the navigation links. I'm going to navigate into my sample folder. Actually, let me go into my examples folder. And then I'm going to go to the RFP and the statement of work here with this NASA statement of work. I'm going to just show you kind of the statement of work so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so again, it's the 21 pages. So we'll just open that up here. General statement of work, we've got our cover page, and then we go into intro, background, and then into the desired questions for us to answer and do, the kind of the statement of work and what we'll actually be doing in our requirements. So I'm jumping out of here. I'm going back into VisibleThread. And so one of the first things I know we said that we would talk about was doing the acronyms, and then we'll jump into actually doing the Excel compare and the docs compare as well. Okay. So first thing, I'm going to highlight my specific document here. I'm in my summary tab, and I'm going to just hit my extract acronyms button that you can actually see here. So once I select this button, what the system does for us, the solution does for us, is it's going to go into the document, it scans the entire document, and then it gets all of these acronyms up for us here that you can see. One of the nice things about the acronym report now, as you're looking at it here on the screen, is the fact that I can actually also look at the status of my acronyms as well. Okay, so I'm running this on the statement of work. So one of the first things, that I used to like to do in my proposal process, when kind of a couple years ago when I was a senior proposal manager, is one of the first things I wanted to do was make sure that I'm reflecting the language from the actual statement of work or from your solicitation, RFP, RFI, etc., so that I can create a glossary of terms for my actual writers, okay, and the subject matter experts and everything, just so that as we're writing our content, I know that we're using the same sort of language back to the actual customer. I'm sure this is something that you all do as well. So this is very, very helpful because now I can actually have a list of defined acronyms. And in this case, what's also nice about this is that it tells me the status of all of the acronyms. So though this might not be a big deal when you're looking at the solicitation, it obviously becomes a big deal on the kind of other end of it when we look at an actual proposal. Okay, so first I'm looking at my report here. I've got the ability to export this report into Excel that we'll take a peek at in a minute. I also have what we call this edit acronym ignore list. Okay, so let's export the report first so you can actually see what this looks like in the output. Okay, so it's going to export into Excel, and you saw me select the button, and then now I've got my kind of handy dandy Excel that's going to pop up for us here. And I will just expand this out first so we can see that on the screen. And what you'll see is the exact same information that you just saw in the report that was within VisibleThread. Okay. So let's take a look at the report a little bit just to kind of understand. So I've got my acronym here. I've got my definition of the acronym. And then I've got my status here in column C. Okay. I've got my location of where it is. And then it shows me the first occurrence as well. And it tells me the count of times that this acronym actually occurs. So the only time you're going to see the first occurrence is, obviously in this case, everything checks out. So I've appropriately defined my actual acronym here, SISTO. And then throughout, though I've been using the SISTO acronym, there doesn't seem to be any sort of other issues throughout the document. Okay. Then I come to something like this, my CNE. Here we've got repeated definitions. Okay, so what this is telling me is on page 4, this is where it finds the first definition of CNE, and then it finds it again on page 9. Okay, so it's telling me, okay, you've got this defined several times. Is this really something that you want to do? Do you want to have this defined several times? Probably not when you start talking about, especially on the proposal side, using up what I like to call that precious realty, so that, I'm not taking up time defining an acronym several times, number one. Number two, it also doesn't look as neat and professional when someone's reading this proposal as well. Okay. And this could obviously be due to kind of several reasons. When you parse out your volumes out to different writers and different SMEs, everybody's kind of defining the acronyms based on their little piece of writing that they're doing, and then you mold it all back together. And then all of a sudden now we've got several places where people are defining acronyms, maybe things are being defined before the acronym, et cetera, et cetera. So this becomes very useful to be able to look at those type of items. Okay, so let's look through the other statuses too. We've got a couple of other statuses here. So I can see my repeated definitions again. I even see things that are not defined. And then I also see things that are used before the definition. Okay, so that simply means, and you could probably guess, but I'm using my acronym before I'm actually defining it. So again, how does somebody tell what the acronym is if I'm going to use it before I actually define it? Okay, and then one of my favorite things is the conflicting definition. So in this case, I'm looking at HECN, so high-end computer networking, but then it finds that same acronym again, which, okay, that checks out. But now my definition is high-end computing network, okay? So even with that small, minute change in how I'm defining it, it could definitely change even the way in which I'm trying to express this particular acronym, which then again, on the proposal side of things, kind of speaks to, my lack of maybe understanding of what the actual statement of work is asking when I'm defining it in these different ways, okay? Or it could just simply be something where I just misprinted it, or I, misquoted on my status here. But I think it's really nice that it picks up just even that minute detail in my acronym. Okay, so now at this point I can take this report. It is on the statement of work again. So after I've done this, I can actually then take the acronym and the definition here, and then I can actually, and I kind of created one quickly on the slide here, but I can then, put it into Word at this point, copy out the acronym and definition, clean up the list a little bit, and then use this as a glossary of terms to then submit to, my SMEs, my writers, et cetera, et cetera. So now we're all on the same page with what we're using in terms of the acronyms. Okay, so I am going to jump back into VisibleThread here. Okay. And one of the other things I wanted to talk to you all about is then the edit acronym ignore list. So what's nice about the edit acronym ignore list is that I can actually start to look at what I like to call false positives, right? So I may have acronyms like things like about that are capitalized, but it's not an actual acronym. You know, so I can now start to put those type of things that I know that kind of tend to be like APR for April or AUG for August. I can put those type of things on my acronym ignore list. So when we run through the document again with the acronym report, it'll then take away those sort of things that I like to call, you know, the false positives, or things like confidential and private that you'll see that are large in large caption. So you want to kind of put that stuff into the ignore list so that it doesn't bring it up into your report. Okay. So on the flip side, when you're looking at a response now, you can now look at it with the same sort of eyes here, because now I can look for where my repeated definitions are, where things that are used before the definition, you know, all of those items become important. And I can also do the same thing that I did with the glossary to hand out to the subject matter experts or the writers. I can now create a glossary that I might have to submit along with my proposal. So it's just a nice, quick, easy way to look at the acronyms and then quickly be able to pull them out and create those type of lists. So again, one of the big things I think with VisibleThread, to me, is always that time saving, and then the quality of the work that you get outside of VisibleThread as well. But it's really that time saving, and I think many of us can identify with doing acronyms where you're sitting there with a document, you're trying to read through it to kind of do that editing kind of eye and check. But you know, as with everything, doing that type of task and repetitive tasks, you can start to gloss over and miss things and everything. So this is one of those tasks in the proposal process that VT Docs does really, really well for you. Okay. All right, so what I am going to do is ask if anyone has any questions on anything now that I actually talked about. And I think, you know, we are monitoring the question section, so please feel free to ask
We are.
any.
So the first question is, I actually have a question to everybody who's joining. Was there an issue at the beginning with connectivity? I've had somebody who said there was a problem and they had to rejoin. So if the beginning was missed for everyone, just please let me know, and we'll go over things again. But I do have two questions here. The first one is for the acronym ignore list. And the question is, when you edit the acronym ignore list, does it affect all users using VisibleThread or only your document that you just ran the acronym report on?
Excellent question. So it is a global change for the entire instance. So it does affect all the users.
Okay. And actually the acronym ignore list, does it also work for multiple documents or just the one document that you've ran it on?
So once you put the acronyms into that ignore list, it's going to work across the board for all documents.
Okay, great. I think that answers Aubrey's question as well.
Okay.
And fantastic. And I'm seeing people are, thank you for letting me know that the connectivity was fine for most people. So, but again, we'll have the recording later. So if you missed the beginning, it will be recorded. We will share it out. And there's another question here, which is, can the export be generated in Word?
No, the export is generated in Excel, and then so that glossary of terms that you saw me do, or that you saw the finished output, I simply took, and I'm going to scroll back over to that acronym ignore list. I took out the acronym and definition columns and then cleaned it up and then put it into the Word document, and then just kind of came up here and chose a table format, from within Word, and then that's how I actually created the list in the Word.
Okay. And then there's a follow-on question from the first one. So the initial question, just to remind you, Denai, was when you edit an acronym list, does it affect all users using VisibleThread or only your document that you just ran the acronym report on? And the follow-up question is, so can you create a custom acronym ignore list for individual use or proposal use?
So, very good question. In terms of this particular use of the acronym list, no. It's going to always affect all of the entire instance. But what you can do is you can actually use, and we'll go back to the first webinar, but you could actually use dictionaries to create an acronym list and then customize it per customer, so that what you would actually be able to do, and I'm going to pop out of here. We've got a little bit of time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if I created a dictionary here, and I put in like an acronym list dictionary, I could actually use my quality analysis tab, okay, and my download annotated document, but use a dictionary that has acronyms to actually look for particular acronyms. Okay, so that would be another way to kind of use VT Docs, but in another element, but still looking at acronyms outside of using the acronym ignore list.
Okay. John, if you want to learn more about the dictionaries, we had a great session, gosh, is it 3 weeks ago, I think?
Yep.
It was. So the video is available on the website. So it's right there if you want to go over that. One final question here before we move on, which is, does the starting document need to be a PDF or can it be a Word document?
It can be either.
Either. Perfect. Okay. Great. Denai, I'll leave it to you to move on.
Okay, sounds good. So what we'll jump into then is the compare. So I obviously have my kind of handy dandy documents here. I'm going to go to my compare docs folder here. So we'll first talk about the compare docs here. Okay. So I've got my folder. I'm actually at the folder level, and you can see all of my documents within this particular folder. I've got the draft and the final. And then I'm in my summary tab again, and I've got what I like to call my nice kind of easy button. So I can navigate right to the button, select the button, and then it asks me here, hey, which documents do you want to compare? So just as an FYI, my documents do have to be the same document name type. I can compare a PDF to a Word document, or obviously just the straight compare with PDF to PDF or Word to Word. Okay. So I'm going to pick my PEO final and my draft here. I'm going to ask it to put my draft first, and then I'm going to do my final. Okay. So one of the things that I know people ask me a lot, and I'm just going to kind of jump out of here, is people will ask me kind of, well, what's the difference with doing this compare and, you know, et cetera, compared to, you know, using like Word or using some other functionality. So one of the things that I think is the difference here, and I'm going to jump back into, I'm actually here in the VisibleThread in my presentation so you can see that. Now, are you all able to see my screen, and am I looking at the right one? Because I do have two screens up.
We're looking at the other one, Denai, so we're looking at presenter mode.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. So I'm going to do this real quick if you just bear with me. And actually, let's just do this. I'm going to, so that I don't waste a lot of time, I'm going to end the show here and we'll just go into the slides. Okay. So one of the major differences, I believe, when you're looking at Word or you're looking at Adobe, as well as doing kind of one of the two biggest ones that people will do. I know there's some other systems to work with compare, but those are really the two biggest ones that I think most people use, is the difficulty in which you're not able to read things. Because what it does is it does, as you can see here with difficult, hard to see, read, that's highlighted here in red, is that it provides you with these strikeouts. That kind of gives you different colors and et cetera. So you begin to kind of, it gets a little bit muddled when I'm looking at it, and it's not clear and concise. Okay. So one of the things that I like about what we do here with our compare is I'm going to hit the easy button here. I choose which I want. So I'm going to do the same thing, a left and a right kind of compare. Okay. I'm going to put my draft on the left-hand side. And I can tell it's on the left-hand side because immediately if you watch my baseline here, it changes to tell me which document I'm choosing, okay? So I choose that, now I'm like, okay, this is gonna be on my left, and then I choose my final, put it on the right. I've got some other things here that I can do with my advanced options, so I can exclude text. You know, maybe if we know that there's some differences in the heading or the footers, maybe we don't want that in our actual compare, so I can put that text in here so it's excluded. And then I'm gonna hit my compare here, okay? This is gonna be a report that comes in Excel, and we'll just take a peek at that and download it here. And so here is my compare, and I'm gonna make this a little bit larger so we can all see it. But hopefully what you can see in terms of the differences with like a Word compare or with an Adobe compare is that it's very, very clean in terms of what I'm looking at. So a lot of times when you're working off a draft and you get the final in from the government, you just want to see what the differences are. I may not, you know, I don't necessarily care about if they moved, you know, a period somewhere or a full stop. I don't care if there's an exclamation point that's been moved. But what I do care is what is the changes to the actual content, okay? So what I'm looking at, I've got my draft here on the left-hand side. I've got my final on the right. And then my middle column C, which becomes really important, obviously, is telling me what the differences are when I start looking at the actual content here, okay? So what I have is, and I'm gonna just put a quick filter on here so we can kind of see what that list is, okay? So I've got added, I've got deleted, of course identical, and then I've got modified, okay? Any sort of change in those categories, added, deleted, and modified, is always gonna be in red, and anything that's identical is always gonna be in blue, okay? So what I might wanna do is I put a filter on. I may not necessarily care about what's been, what's identical, but I'm gonna care about what's added, what's deleted, and what's been modified. Okay, so just by quickly putting that filter on, now I can kind of look at my column C here, and I can see just those options instead of also seeing what's identical. Okay, so you can see even something as minute as, I'm going to look here at row 14, right? I can see that 6.2.6 changed to 6.3.6, and I can see my date issue changes here as well. Okay, so some of these changes might not be huge, but then again, as we all know, some of these changes can be huge. And even though they may be minute in terms of maybe a number's changed or maybe just one word or two, it can be catastrophic if we don't catch that difference in terms of our compliance within our written proposal. Okay. So again, I'm doing this compare on a particular solicitation here. You can also do this on your proposal documents, right? So even though you keep kind of like a version history as you're going through for all of us, but what I can do too is I can then look at my version compare here, and then I could look at, okay, what were the changes from version, you know, I don't know, 22 to version 52? You know, what were the actual changes? What are the things that we did? And one of the issues I know that I used to run into sometimes in some of the jobs I've worked in and in some of the industries was that, you know, people would often say, hey, I think my comments got missed, excuse me. I don't think you made that edit, you know, blah, blah, blah. So now this is an easy way to say, you know what, let me, instead of, you know, arguing or, you know, when things are high and we're all trying to rush and get this proposal done, now I could quickly just put it in the actual VT docs here. I could compare, you know, the version that they last made their comments on to another version, and I could actually see, did we make the particular change that they're talking about? And I could see immediately if we made the change, or maybe there was some sort of difference and someone said, hey, we need to actually change to this. But now you have a running record of your compare and what was actually done as well. So you can look at that on the proposal aspect. And I'm just throwing out, you know, one use case I think that was particularly painful for me, obviously. But I'm sure, as you can all kind of tell, like how this would be useful within your own organizations in your current jobs. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take a minute to break here with the compare, and then I want to see if perhaps there's any questions about anything that we just reviewed.
Okay, Denai, it's a little bit quiet on questions. Oh, hold on. Here we go.
Okay.
Does does the compare find matching paragraph if the move is more complex, i.e., if 6.2 is 12.6 in the revised doc, does the tool still identify the change as only a move?
It will. So it'll identify it as like a modification, but it will identify the change so you can actually see where it's been changed to.
Okay, and that's the second question we got in as well. How does compare work with moves? So I hope that answers it.
Right.
I didn't see where the compare gives the location of the changes. Does it give the location?
It does give the location. So I'm going to just kind of cruise here, and I'm going to also take my filter off because you'll be able to see that a little bit better. But when I look here, and let me remove my filter, you can see here with my reference. So this is my reference column. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to take all my different filters that I had off so you can see that. So you can see it has my reference column here, and then it tells me what my reference is, okay, in terms of my section in this case.
Okay.
All right. And just for, if I can find it real quick, I know I had an example in here of where something was actually moved. And it's minute. But I may not be able to find it. But I have a case in here where something was actually moved, and you can see where what it does is it'll say like, and actually this might be it here, where this was added in here and then deleted from here. But you can actually see that that particular move. So in this case, this is how it actually was done, and that's how it fed out the information back to us in this compare.
Okay, right. We've got one more here. If I have a multiple word sentence to skip or avoid, what is the identifier used to separate the words, e.g. page number and title, chapter title?
Wow, ask the question one more time. I'm trying to make sure I fully understand.
If I have multiple words or sentences to skip or avoid, what is the identifier used to separate the words? For example, page number and title chapter.
Okay, so the question is asking if you need to skip those?
Yes, so if you have multiple words or sentences to skip or avoid, what is the identifier?
So the big thing would be I'd have to, and let me know if I'm answering your question, but if you remember when I hit the first compare here, that would be something that I could actually put in my text to exclude, if that's the question, if I'm hearing it correctly. Or I should say if I'm interpreting it correctly.
Yes, that's it. We just got confirmation through.
Okay, good. Okay.
Comma or colon is a follow-on question from that. So when you exclude text, do you put a comma or a colon in between?
A comma.
Okay. Perfect.
Alrighty.
I think we're good to go to the next section. Thanks, Denai.
Okay, sure, of course. No, thank you. All good questions. Alrighty. So I'm going to jump to the Excel compare now. Okay. And we're going to jump obviously to my handy dandy pricing folder here. So usually, obviously, we get, our pricing worksheets are always going to be in Excel for the most part. I did come out of my last industry was healthcare, and we actually started to see consultants giving all the different vendors RFPs or solicitations in Excel as well. So I do know that there's some industries that are using Excel to actually do their proposals, and the reason being obviously that I think it becomes easier for them to look at cells and then kind of line them up and compare across vendors. So I always found that interesting because we have this ability to do the compare Excel. So again, I'm highlighting at the folder level, okay? And now instead of using compare docs, I'm going to use my compare Excel, okay? So I'm going to hit the compare Excel like I did before with compare docs. I get to choose my versions here. So I've got version 1, and then I've got my final. Again, you've got that baseline and latest, so you can see which you're putting on the left and which you're putting on the right. I've got my, exclusion of text here with my advanced options. I hit that compare, and this is going to pull out in Excel. And we'll talk about the output a little bit, because I know sometimes, it's one of those things that you look at and you're like, I think I get it, but sometimes not, and that's completely okay. So I'm going to make this wider. So one of the differences with the compare docs and the compare Excel is that with the compare Excel, it pulls me first to this, what I like to call this comparison page real quick. So it looks at sheet by sheet, because it's going to be different with the format, obviously, with Excel. Okay. So immediately what it tells me is, hey, this is where things are identical. And then these are the sheets that have some differences, 2 of them. Okay, so I can see sheet 2 already has a 1-row difference. Sheet 4's got some differences, and then all of the rest of these sheets have differences. Okay. So what I can do is I can go directly from my go key here, or I can actually just jump down here and go to the sheet 7. Okay, so we're going to pick on sheet 7 here. Okay, I will make this bigger, no worries. All right, so again, what we're looking at is our column C here, right? And column C has, again, identical, modified, added, deleted, etc. My reference, though, okay, now becomes my row, because in Excel, obviously, we look at everything per the row, and then we look across the columns. Okay. So in my sheet 7, I'm going to jump to row 8, which is the first thing I can actually see here in terms of a textual change. I've got service order fee element in column 1 that has changed to markup rates in my final version. Okay. Now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can actually look a little bit closer to this, or at this, I should say. Then I've got my commas here. Okay. So I can see that I've got column 1, service order fee element, and then I've got 2, 3, 4, and 5. So my blue commas are telling me, hey, when you look across the columns, this is what we're looking at. There's no text in these particular columns, but it's identical to what's on the right-hand side here. Okay. Now we're going to look even closer on the right-hand side, and what you will see is there's 2 new red commas, okay, on the right-hand side. So what this is telling me is that there were some columns that were added on the right-hand side, okay? And then the rest of my columns obviously moved, but they're still blue, so they're still identical to what was in my version 1. Okay, so markup rates, column 1, and then I'm looking at, my 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I've got, and what you can see too is if you kind of peek up here above, as we all know, when you add columns into Excel, it's going to add it across the board for all the rows in that particular sheet. So I can see my 2 new red columns here, here, etc. So I can actually see that when I look down the rows, I'm going to see those 2 red commas because there were columns that were added. And in some cases, there might have been some text added into those rows, or there might be some differences in text on top of it. But you can actually see how all of that is handled when you look at the actual compare here. Okay. So I want to make sure that everyone's kind of getting this. And if you're not, it's completely okay. It took me a little bit, to be honest with you. I had 3 screens up, and I had my, version 1, my final, and then I had the sheet in the middle telling me where the differences were, so I could kind of see exactly what it was doing. Okay. So I'm going to take a pause there, let you kind of all digest that. And some people I know might be like, hey, got it, understand. Some other people might be in the middle of the road, and then there might be some others that are like, can you say that again?
Yeah, let's see if we get a few questions in. I think it might be worthwhile doing an example where it's not the first column that's changed, but it's a subsequent one.
Mm-hmm.
That could maybe be helpful.
Right. That's true. So you can see here as well. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit so you can see the comparison a little bit better. than with it being so large. But again, here, let's go to somewhere that, oh, we could just use what's below. But I've got my red comma here, okay? And it's telling me, okay, so there's been a change even in that column 1 when I look across to my final version. So here, no text, right? Over here, they put routine in that column 1, okay? And then I can see a change too with my SOF element 1 that was changed to, you know, my profit on labor here as well. Okay. So, and you can kind of see this when I'm looking here below at kind of all the differences here where, okay, we've got the column 1 change, and then we've got the SOF element 6, and then over here to the GNA rate, excuse me. Okay.
Okay, so it's really just a matter of counting the commas.
Right, to look at your columns in terms of, okay, where is the actual change?
Okay.
Okay.
Our question section is very quiet tonight. Guys, do you have any questions? pop them through, or let us know. I mean, if you think this is all clear, even better. But do feel free, if you have any questions, pop them in and we'll go through them.
Right. And we can even look at, you know, I think even when you start looking at the PowerPoint too. So, you know, this will be obviously shared as we said before, but we can kind of, you know, cruise through if that'll help a little bit, but completely up to, you know, everyone obviously on the call here.
Okay, yeah, we're starting to get a few questions through. Okay,
Hi.
so this is a long one. Let me read this out. I had
Okay.
a problem with the government pricing sheet that had restrictions on editing that would not properly compare. Is there something that you would not allow? Sorry, is there something that would not allow the compare because they lock down editing ability?
Yes, so this is actually a good question. But yeah, that is an issue. If they've done any sort of lockdown, you would need to either see if there's some way to, you know, get it unlocked, but that will actually change how we can look at the actual compare because of the lock.
Okay. And then, oh, I think this is a good one actually. Would it be possible to see the two documents, to see the before and after and what's described?
Yeah, of course. I was thinking that someone might want to do that. So I'm going to go back into here, into VT Docs, and I'm going to pull out the final, let's pull out the draft first, okay? So let me right click, I'm just going to open this spreadsheet, and we'll look at this. Okay, so here is this, and my sheet 7, so I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh wait, I missed one of my other tabs. But we're looking at the service order fee. Okay, so this is my version here, and this is my version 1. So up top, if you can see, it might be a little bit small on the screen, but I'm looking at version 1. Okay, so I can see my service order fee element in column A. Okay, then I've got my B, C, D, and E. Okay, so let's take a peek and just remember service order fee element. So you can actually just kind of look at that first. We'll concentrate on the one element. Then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to open up my final here. Okay. All right, and you'll see, I'm going to go back to that service order fee element and I'm going to expand this out. So just concentrating on that one thing that we talked about, I can actually look here. So remember it told us that service order fee had changed here to markup rates. Okay. So just concentrating on that small change first. Does that kind of make sense for everybody?
I think so.
Okay. So now if you remember, it told us that there were 2 new columns that were added. And so what you can see, and this is going to be a little bit different, is remember I had like my big column C, you know, D, etc. So what we did is we actually combined, kind of did that split combine where we merged these 2, but we have them right here. So it's running through and it's going to run all the way through. And then on this 2 where we've got EF, so that's been like a combination of the columns where we merged them, but there's still 2 columns here. Okay, so if we look across the top here, we've got C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, and now I'm going to go back here. Not like that. I'm going to pull this down. And then do you see how we've got these huge columns, C, D, E? And we don't have that F, you know, that F, G, H pulled into there because we haven't merged those columns. So what they did is they merged the columns and put them under one heading, but there's still 2 columns within this, the merged, obviously, columns. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I want to be clear. So again, one of the things that we looked at here, where I can see my total service order fee, and then it's got element 1, 2, 3 that was put in here. And now I look to my final, not this final, but let's pull out the other one. I'm going to close this one down because it wants to pull up. It doesn't want to pull up my final. Let's go here. I'm just going to go here and then pull out that final again, which is completely fine. So we'll do this. Give me 1 second again. Sorry. I've got all these 1,000,001 screens open here.
It always happens when you go through a lot of stuff. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so this is what, so I want to come back here just real quick so we can look at, so there's my row 16 where we had that total service order fee element and the 1, 2, 3. And then we can look at, see how it changed on the right-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down and let's open back up this one. And I know it's, hold on 1 second. So here's my final. I'm going to pull up my final again. And there's the final that I want. So this is my final. You can see up here. And you'll see how that changed down here where I don't have that element anymore, was taken out. Okay. This one's a little bit harder to explain. I know that it's one of those things you have to look kind of back and forth at. As well, but you can see just by slightly telling here with that row 16 here with my total service order fee and how that was taken out when it had the element 1, 2, 3 in here as well. Okay.
Okay, I hope that clarified it. Let us know if you want more on that. I've got a few other questions as well, Denai. One
Sure.
is, if a row is added, would you just, if a row is added, would just that row be marked as a chance, or would all rows after that point be marked? Oh, sorry, as a change.
Right. I know it. Yeah. So no, the rows, if they haven't had any sort of other physical changes in them, they wouldn't be marked as a change because it would still be tracking that row is still the same. So it actually wouldn't, even though it shifts because a row's been added, but it wouldn't shift everything. I know what you're talking about. So the row would still, they would still tell you that there wasn't a change.
Okay. And then, is there an example showing equations or changes in equations and formulas?
Oh man, I don't think I have one necessarily in here. But then that's a good one too, because there was actually something I was going to work on to show the, you know, the sum changes. I know one of the biggest things is I can tell when something's been hand jammed in if this helps, compared to using an actual formula. I could actually be able to tell that type of a change. So that does answer your question, but in terms of being able to show you that, I must apologize, I don't have an example of that. But we'll definitely put an example in here for next time, or for, you know, other demos and stuff. And if you'd like to see that, you know, please feel free to, as you saw, we have our emails at the beginning, but we could definitely show you that as well.
Okay, guys, any other questions? I know there's a lot coming through, but let us know if there's anything else you'd like us to cover at this point. We're getting a lot of thank yous tonight, so that's lovely. You're all very welcome. We're glad that you could join us today.
Yes. Yes, very, very glad. Thank you. And I know it's not an easy subject matter. I mean, obviously the compare makes sense in terms of, but the Excel is particularly interesting because, you know, there isn't something out there that actually really does the Excel. So it's definitely something that I know is new, or if, you know, and if you try to compare it with using Excel, you've got to kind of do all of this, you know, finagling to actually do that compare. So I definitely understand. So if there's more kind of clarification that you want, like I said before, please, please, please feel free to contact me, and we could definitely look at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think that those are all the questions for now.
Okay.
So
and I'm going to just pull in the slide deck real quick so we can look at kind of some housekeeping items.
Exactly, thank you. And for everybody, we will share the slide deck afterwards for you. So a lot of what Danae has shown you today is going to be in the deck. For anybody who actually joined us last week, Jason talked about, oh sorry, it wasn't last week, week before last, we're doing so many of these right now, but the week before last with Jason, our CTO. VTDocs 3.3 is now available for our cloud users, so there's better PDF parsing, and our report layout has changed to clearer reports with less clutter. So that's released to everyone in the cloud right now. A quick note, if there are any on-prem customers on the call today and you're looking for better shredding right now, then just please send us an email. Otherwise, we have an on-premise release coming up later on this year. And actually, oh, sorry, Danae, we've got a last question on Excel Compare. And it's looking for confirmation here. Let me just ask you this. So to confirm, the Excel Compare will identify if there are changes in an equation, even if the result of the equation is the same.
So what it'll do, and let me clarify, is so if there is something where someone, what I've found, and is that way, if it's something where there's a change in terms of someone's actually hand jammed numbers in, then it will identify that piece. But I think what you're asking is if there's a change to the actual formula, can I put it that way? Or the actual equation, but the numbers are still the same? Is that kind of what's being asked?
I think so, yes. Changes
Okay.
in the equation, even if the result of the equation is the same. Yes, so if the numbers remain the same.
No, so if the numbers remain the same, then it's going to first look at those, you know, at the number as whether it was changed or not. So that's the piece where it can start to get a little bit tricky when you're looking at the compare for the Excel. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope that answers it. Yes, it does. Perfect. Okay. You're welcome, Ellen. Great. Okay. Well, guys, honestly, we do have a little bit of time left. So if there are any more questions, please type them in. As you type and as you're thinking about it, I'm just going to let you know that we've got in this current series of virtual sessions, 2 more planned in the next couple of weeks. One is using VisibleThread to drive sales and RFP strategy. This is with one of our customers, Express Scripts. That's on Thursday, the 21st. And then we have the business impact of VT Docs going beyond the compliance matrix. So that's looking at some of these functions again, and some others as well. And that's also with one of our customers, ISCI. Okay, I'm getting a ton of great presentations and thank yous. So we're so glad we were able to do this with everyone today, and Denai, fantastic presentation.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you all for joining too. It makes it nice and easy when we have a good group of people that join us as well. So, and thank you for the questions.
Okay, and just as you're saying it, we've got another one in,
Okay.
which is, are there any gotchas or things to be aware of if converting Google Sheets or Apple numbers to Excel format for comparison?
I think, and this is in terms of the gotchas, what I have found is sometimes when you have those Google Sheets, there can be some little, and you may have found this, kind of some little strange things that creep in, like some strange just wingdings or some other things. So I would just always be aware of that possibility, because anytime you're taking something and switching it, into another sort of format, so to speak, even though it's kind of sort of supposed to transition the same way, I have found just some issues in that in itself, and that's obviously something that's outside of VisibleThread's control. So that would be something that I would say is just be watchful for those type of things. And even in the compare, you could see like some strangeness going on, or it'll tell you like, hey, it'll flag some stuff in red that might look a little bit strange. So I have seen that happen, but I haven't seen it with such great percentage that it's something that you should be kind of up in arms about or alarmed about. But I would just say, just watch out for that type of formatting issue.
Absolutely. And one more that goes right back to the beginning, which is to confirm, did you say that acronym definitions are stored in a library?
No.
I think that goes back to the dictionaries.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good question. So with the acronym report pulling itself, when you use what I call the the easy button here is kind of what I'd always term it. It does not, it's not using a database in any sort of way. So it's actually jumping in the document, pulling out all of those acronyms in whatever the specific document you're looking at, and then giving you that report. If for some reason there was a question as to, hey, if I want to specialize maybe my acronym list to specific customers, because obviously as you get certain solicitations in, you're going to know that that customer is always going to typically use these same acronyms. You can create a dictionary off of that acronym report that you pull out of VisibleThread for that specific customer. And then you could create what we call the dictionaries, okay? And I could put it in my quality dictionaries, which my quality dictionaries and my concept dictionaries. Quality dictionaries go with my quality analysis tab. Concept dictionaries go with my concept tracking tab. So what I could do is I can have that acronym dictionary jump into my quality analysis tab, and I'm just going to refresh this. And what will happen then is I could use that dictionary with the acronyms. And let's jump here, let's say, and I want to look at my response. I could use that acronym dictionary list, and I'm writing a response particularly for NASA. So let's say we've created a NASA acronym list that we know they always use, and I just want to make sure what's going on in my actual proposal and how I'm using it. So I could highlight my proposal, go to my quality analysis tab, put on that acronym dictionary, so I can come in here, use different dictionaries, choose that acronym dictionary. And what I'll do is I'll create, maybe we should create one, maybe we could dive more into this subject, but create it in here and then do my download annotated document. And what that'll do is it'll find every acronym that I have in my dictionary and look at, and so I could do several different things, but it'll give us this kind of report. And I'm doing this obviously with a different dictionary, but if I use my acronym dictionary, what it would do is it would run through my document, use the commenting feature of Word here, okay, and then it would highlight that particular acronym and however I've defined it in my actual dictionary, okay. And then what you can start to see is you can start to build your dictionary, and then that will then be housed in what most people call a library, or in the dictionaries basically, and it'll be there for the lifetime of your instance. So that's how you can use the acronym reports to also create customized lists for specific customers. Okay, that's a long explanation. So let me know if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, it's definitely something that, if, you know, and I'm not sure who's asking the question, but if you are a current customer, we could, you know, you can contact me, Denai Malyunga at VisibleThread. You'll have it in the presentation. But, and if you're not, of course, please feel free to contact me too, and we can kind of walk through some sort of a demo so you could really see how that would work, or what I'm talking about. And it might be, I don't know, Evelyn, maybe something in the future where we do another webinar on sort of specific topics. We can really do that.
Wow, that's actually a great reminder for everybody. We do have a survey at the end of this. So as you log out, you'll get the survey. And one of the questions is, what topics would you like us to cover in future? So if this is something that you want to dive in a little bit further into, please be sure to let me know in the survey, because we do use it to get to kind of our next topics that we cover in webinars. So let us know there. Well, listen, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Guys, this has been such a lively session. Thank you very much for getting so involved in all of your questions. Denai, thank you so very much for going through everything and taking the time today.
Yes.
You already mentioned here are email addresses for questions, so you can reach out to us directly. You can always reach out to support, or as I already mentioned, if you're new to VisibleThread and you'd like a demo, you can email us at info@visiblethread.com. We do post a lot of what we're up to, new events and online events that we're doing, new content that we have on LinkedIn. So if you're not following us already, please go ahead and do so. So there should be some interesting content there. And as I said, I will send the recording and the slides to you in the next couple of days. So again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Keep well, keep in good health, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks on our next virtual session. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All righty. Take care, everyone. Thank you again.